Welcome to the Beginner Knitter. I am Miss Elizabeth from the Sachem Library Teen Department, and today I'll be showing you how to make a simple scarf using just one stitch, the knit stitch. The first thing that most patterns will ask you to do is check your gauge to make sure that the sizing comes out correctly. This will tell you if you need to change your needle size or adjust the tension in your tugging finger. Since this pattern is not row-based, but measurement-based, gauge matters less. Looser knitters will knit fewer rows. Tighter knitters will knit more to achieve the same length. For this pattern, you would knit 15 to 20 rows and aim for it to be about 4 inches. Starting with the main color, which you have 2 skeins of in your kit, take your knitting needle and make a slip knot. Do that by making a loop. And then pull the side of the string, not the end, through the loop. Slip this over the needle and tighten by pulling the tail of the yarn. This is your first loop. Now we are going to cast on 29 more loops. There are many ways to cast on, but I'm going to show you the simplest one. Take the working yarn, the part attached to the yarn ball, and wrap it around your finger once. Then slide the needle up along your finger to take the stitch onto the needle. Repeat this until you have 30 loops on your needle. Make these loops snug, but not too tight. You will need to be able to slide your other needle under them to knit your first row. Once you have your 30 stitches, line up all the knots on the same side of the knitting needle and prepare to begin your first row. This will be the trickiest row, so don't get discouraged. There is no shame in pulling it out and starting over. Hold the knitting needle with your work in your left hand. Tighten the tail yarn around your pointer finger. And take the empty needle in your right hand and slide it under the first loop, making sure that the knots on your needle are all facing in and the needle goes up in front of the knot. Holding your working yarn taut with your left finger, slide the right hand needle through the loop, reach back for the working yarn, hook it with your needle, and pull the loop through. There is now one loop on the right needle. Lift the loop from the top of the left needle off. This is your first stitch. You will notice now that your working yarn is coming from the right-handed needle with the new loop. Continue to wrap that around your left finger. This is where your tension comes from. Now take your right hand needle and slide it under the next loop on your left. Reach through, grab the working yarn, and pull it through. Lift the next loop off the left hand needle. You have now completed 2 stitches. Repeat this process till there are no more loops on the needle. When you get to that last loop, be careful, since this is the slip knot you started with. Gently perform the stitch and pull the tail yarn to tighten that loop. After the next row, it will no longer be loose. We will now start the second row. Straighten your stitches and move that needle to your left hand. This is called turning your work. Wrap the working yarn around your left finger. Take your right hand needle, slide it under the next loop on your left. Reach through, grab the yarn, and pull through. Lift the next loop off the left hand needle. Continue to the end of the row and turn your work. Continue this until your work measures 65 inches. Sometimes you need to stop knitting before reaching the end of the row. So how do you know which direction you were going when you return? The secret is in the working yarn, the thread attached to the yarn ball. That yarn will always be attached to the piece of work on your right hand. So put that needle in your right and the other in your left and wrap the tail yarn across onto your left finger. You will now continue knitting off the left hand needle and onto the right. The process for starting a new yarn ball in the middle of a project is the same as that is for changing colors. So use the following directions for both. Once your work measures 65 inches in length, you are going to change colors. I will show you how to do that now. Take your work in your left hand, pulling the tail yarn around your left finger. Using your white accent yarn, layer your working yarn so that the tail of the white yarn is facing the same as the tail of your main color. Wrap the working yarns of both colors around your left finger and knit as before by taking the right hand needle, sliding it under the next loop on your left. Reach through, grab the white working yarn only, and pull through. Lift the next loop off the left-hand needle. Hold onto the white tail yarn and tighten. It will be loose for the next 2 rows. Once you have completed 2 rows in the white, you will notice that the 2 sides look a little different. In patterns with more than 1 stitch, where the 2 sides look different the whole time, the side with the separate white line would be considered the wrong side. This pattern does not have a wrong side, but since we have changed colors, you see how the knit stitch looks different on each side of the work. You can now cut the red working yarn tail loose from your project. Continue knitting in the white until your work measures 5 inches. We will now start the binding off process. In the end, you will have no stitches on any needles, and your work will be knotted so it doesn't unravel. Knit the first 2 stitches as usual. Now take the needle in your left hand and slide it under the loop at the bottom of your right hand needle. Lift that loop over the loop above and pull it off the needle, leaving the loop you jumped over on the needle. Knit another stitch from the left needle and then lift the bottom loop over the top. Repeat this process until there is only 1 loop left on the right hand needle and nothing to jump it with. Pull some yarn through by giving a little tug. Cut your yarn with a long tail and then pull that tail through the loop. You are now bound off. I will now show you 2 methods for attaching the fringe using the tools in your kit. You could also use a crochet needle if you have one at home. Cut 48 strands of yarn measuring 8 inches long. You can use both colors or 1 color. That is up to you. I used an even mix of both colors. Divide your strands into 16 batches of 3. We are going to attach 8 evenly spaced batches to each end of the scarf. First, I'm going to show you how to attach the fringe using the knitting needle. Take 1 batch of 3 strands. Slide your knitting needle through the scarf. I have my tail yarn here in the way here, so I'm going to use that in my fringe also. Wrap the yarn around the needle. Pull the side of your batch through on the needle, through the hole. And you can tie off in 2 different ways here. Picking up the strands from either side and pulling them through for a simple knot, which is what I'm doing, or Pull half the yarn through and tie off as you would a balloon tail. I will show you this more in detail in our next method. Repeat this process, evenly spacing your batches along the edge of your scarf. The second way I'm going to show you to do the fringe is using the yarn needle included in your kit. We are going to use the same 8 batches evenly spaced on this side of the scarf. Take a batch of 3 strands and feed them through the eye of the needle. It might help to twist them together to make them go through a little easier. Pull them through halfway, but don't knot as you would if you were sewing. Slide your needle through the end of the scarf. Then, holding the ends of one side, pull the ends of the other through. Tie off the knot by wrapping the yarn around your fingers and pulling the tails through the loop. You can now trim the tails even, and if you prefer a thicker fringe, you can add more and space them closer. Now that we are finished, you see that there are tail ends of yarn hanging around. This will always be located at the spots where you changed colors or when you ran out and had to start a new ball of yarn. We will weave these in to create a finished project. You never cut without weaving because it can cause your project to unravel. Using your needle, thread your loose tail through. Then weave the tail in the section that matches its color to keep it hidden. Push your needle through 3 or more stitches on one side. Not through to the other side of the scarf, but just skating through on the one side. Pull that yarn through as if sewing. Don't pull too tightly because you don't want to create a pucker. Then change direction for another 3 stitches. You can now pull your needle off and cut the rest of the tail off. You change direction in order to keep it from easily unweaving. And that completes our simple scarf. If you have any questions during your project, don't hesitate to contact me, Miss Elizabeth, at elizabeth.fanning@sachemlibrary.org. I will be happy to set up a time to help you.